The Galactic Council had made exactly 3 mistakes in their 17,000-year history. The first was attempting to tax the Vrelian merchant fleets, which resulted in a brief but embarrassing war that nobody liked to talk about. The second was introducing the Kleptari to the concept of insurance fraud. And the third was assuming that humans were harmless because they still used primitive writing instruments. I should know. I was there when it all fell apart. My name is Throck, and I'm what you might call a survivor, or a coward, depending on who you ask. I served on the Council's flagship, the Infinite Prosperity, as a junior tactical analyst, which is a fancy way of saying I watched screens and tried not to fall asleep during the 70-hour shifts. But on that particular day, the day Captain Velcris decided to demonstrate humanity's insignificance to the entire assembled fleet, I was wide awake. I wish I hadn't been. "Bring up the surveillance footage again," Velcris commanded from his elevated platform. He was a Dravine, all 4 arms and insufferable superiority. His scales shimmered purple under the bridge lights, a color that indicated he was extremely pleased with himself. Never a good sign. The main view screen flickered to life, showing grainy footage of a human settlement on the colony world of Kepler 9. The humans there were farmers, mostly. Simple folk who grew strange vegetables and raised even stranger livestock. The Council had been monitoring them for 6 months, ever since they'd politely declined to join the Galactic Federation and pay the membership fees. "Look at them," Velcris sneered, gesturing with 2 of his arms while the other 2 held his ceremonial data tablets. "They scratch in the dirt with metal tools. They write their pathetic agreements on actual paper with ink and wooden implements. They call them pens." He pronounced the word like it was a disease. Pens. Not neural transcription, not quantum encryption, not even basic holographic projection. "Pens!" The bridge crew laughed obediently. I didn't. Something about the footage bothered me, though I couldn't quite put my finger on it. The human settlement looked too organized, too deliberate. The buildings were arranged in patterns that seemed almost mathematical. "Sir," I ventured, my vocal membranes quivering nervously, "perhaps we should analyze their defensive capabilities before we proceed with the annexation." Velcris turned 3 of his 4 eyes toward me. The 4th remained fixed on the screen, because he was multitasking like that. "Defensive capabilities? Throck. They write with sticks. What are they going to do? Give us a strongly worded letter?" More laughter. Even Sivara, the communications officer who usually had some sense, was chuckling into her translator unit. "Besides," Velcris continued, warming to his subject, "we've scanned their entire settlement. No plasma cannons, no shield generators, no particle accelerators. The most dangerous thing we detected was some kind of chemical compound they use to make their plants grow. Fertilizer, I believe they call it." He waved one arm dismissively. "We'll land 3 battalions. They'll see our superior technology, and they'll surrender within the hour. Then we'll integrate them into the Federation as a Class 7 agricultural world. Simple." I looked back at the screen. A human was walking across the settlement square, and yes, there was a pen clipped to their shirt pocket, just a simple cylinder with a metal tip. But the way the human moved, the way they scanned their surroundings, reminded me of the predators from my home world right before they struck. "Sir, I really think we should." "Enough, Throck." Velcris's scales flashed orange with irritation. "Your excessive caution is noted and ignored. Commence landing operations." The fleet moved into position. 67 warships, each carrying enough firepower to level a continent. All 4, a handful of farmers with pens. It seemed like overkill to me, but Velcris wanted to make a statement. The humans had refused the Council's generous offer, and now they would face the consequences. The landing ships descended through Kepler 9's atmosphere like falling stars. I watched on my tactical display as the first wave touched down on the outskirts of the human settlement. 300 Council soldiers, equipped with energy rifles, combat armor, and enough confidence to choke a Vrelian merchant. "Establish perimeter," the ground commander, a Torellian named Grix, reported. His voice crackled over the communication channel. "No resistance detected. The humans appear to be gathering in the central square. They look like they're waiting for us." "Excellent," Velcris purred. "Move in and accept their surrender. Throck, are you recording this? I want the entire Council to see how efficiently we handle primitive cultures." I was recording. I wish I hadn't been. The soldiers advanced into the settlement, weapons ready but not particularly worried. Why would they be? These were farmers, pen users, people who grew vegetables for a living. What possible threat could they pose? That's when the human in the center of the square stepped forward. She was tall by human standards, with skin the color of earth after rain and hair tied back in a practical knot. She wore simple clothing, work boots, and yes, there was a pen in her breast pocket, a blue one. "Greetings," she said in perfect galactic standard, which should have been our first clue that something was wrong. "My name is Commander Dakota Mills. On behalf of the human colony here, I accept your surrender." There was a moment of confused silence on the bridge. Sivara checked her translation matrix 3 times. Did she just? Velcris started, his scales rippling with colors I'd never seen before. "She offered to accept our surrender, sir," I confirmed, my voice barely above a whisper. Grix's laugh boomed over the comm channel. "That's hilarious. Commander, I think there's been a misunderstanding. We're here to accept your surrender. You have 10 minutes to lay down any weapons and prepare for processing." Dakota Mills smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It was the kind of smile that predators give their prey right before the chase ends. "I'm afraid you're mistaken, Commander Grix. You have 3 minutes to return to your ships and leave our planet. After that, things are going to get unpleasant." "Threats?" Grix's voice carried a mixture of amusement and anger. "From farmers? With what army? What weapons? We've scanned your entire settlement." Dakota reached into her pocket. Every soldier raised their weapon, but she moved slowly, deliberately. She pulled out the blue pen and held it up to the light. "You scanned for energy weapons, plasma technology, quantum explosives," she said conversationally. "You know what you didn't scan for? Chemistry, physics, good old-fashioned ingenuity." She clicked the pen once. It made a small, harmless sound. Nothing happened. Grix laughed again. "Is that supposed to frighten us? A writing implement? Perhaps you'll defeat us with a particularly scathing poem." Dakota clicked the pen twice more. 3 clicks total. "You see," she continued, still holding the pen up, "humans have been fighting wars since before we discovered fire. We've gotten very good at it, very creative, and we learned a long time ago that the best weapons are the ones your enemy doesn't know about until it's too late." On my tactical display, I noticed something odd. The chemical signature we'd detected earlier, the fertilizer, it was everywhere. Not just in the fields, but under the buildings, under the landing pads, under the very ground where our soldiers were standing. "Sir," I shouted, "the compound, it's not fertilizer, it's—" The first explosion was almost polite, a gentle boom that lifted one of the landing ships about 3 meters into the air before dropping it on its side. The second explosion was less polite. It created a crater where our forward command post had been. The third through 15th explosions were downright rude, carving through our battle lines like a Vrelian merchant through a trade dispute. "Retreat!" Grix screamed over the comm. "They've mined the entire area. Fall back to the ships." But it was too late for that. The humans had planned this beautifully, mapped it out with their primitive pens and paper, calculated angles and blast radii without a single computer. Our soldiers ran directly into the kill zones, and more explosions followed. Not nuclear, nothing that would have triggered our sensors, just chemistry, the kind you could mix up in a barn with basic ingredients. Dakota Mills was still standing in the square, untouched. She hadn't moved an inch. "Your 3 minutes are up," she said calmly. "Would you like to discuss surrender terms now?" Velcris's scales had gone completely white, a color I'd only read about in medical texts. It indicated total systemic shock. "Impossible," he whispered. "They're using pens and paper and dirt and brains, sir," I said quietly. "They're using their brains." More reports flooded in. Half our ground forces were casualties. The other half were trapped in a settlement that was apparently one giant booby trap. Every barn, every house, every well had been rigged with explosives made from common agricultural chemicals, things we'd dismissed as harmless because they didn't show up as weapons on our scans. "Fire on the settlement," Velcris ordered, his voice shaking. "Orbital bombardment, level everything." "Sir, our troops, now." Sivara's fingers danced over her console, but before she could activate the weapons systems, alarms blared throughout the bridge. Red lights, the kind that meant very bad things were happening. Sir, we're detecting multiple launch signatures from the planet's surface, the weapons officer reported. They're firing on us. With what? Velcris shrieked. They don't have rockets. They don't have missiles. They have pens. On the view screen, I watched as dozens of objects shot up from various points around the human settlement. They weren't missiles in the traditional sense. They were tubes, crude metal tubes, launched by what looked like compressed gas and chemical propellants, primitive as hell, and heading straight for our fleet. Point defense systems, shoot them down, Velcris commanded. Our weapons fired, and I'll give our gunners credit. They hit most of the incoming projectiles. Most. The ones they missed slammed into the shields of 3 nearby frigates. The shields held easily against the kinetic impact. Then, the projectiles exploded. But these weren't normal explosives. The blast pattern was wrong, the energy signature off the charts. On my console, I watched in horror as the explosion from one tiny human rocket cascaded through the shield matrix of the frigate Zealous Prophet, causing a feedback loop that overloaded the generators. The ship's shields dropped completely. How? The weapons officer stammered. How did they calculate the exact resonance frequency of our shield harmonics? Dakota Mills's voice came over our communication channel. She'd hacked our frequency. With what? A modified radio and a pen? Probably. We've been watching you, she said pleasantly. 6 months you've been in orbit, scanning us, laughing at us. You know what we were doing? Taking notes. Lots of notes. Measurements, observations, calculations, all written down with our primitive pens on our primitive paper. Then we did some math. Turns out your shields have a very predictable harmonic frequency, easy to exploit if you know what you're looking for. Another volley of crude rockets launched from the surface. This time our gunners were more careful, but 2 got through. 2 more frigates lost their shields. You have a choice, Dakota continued. You can keep this up and lose ships, or you can retrieve your survivors and leave. We don't want to kill anyone, but we will defend ourselves. Your call. Velcris looked like he was about to have an aneurysm. All 4 of his arms were shaking. This is impossible. You're farmers. You use pens. Yes, Dakota agreed. We use pens. We write things down. We think, we plan, we learn. And right now, we're teaching you a very important lesson about underestimating people based on their tools. The ship shuddered as another rocket impacted our shields. I checked my console. Our shield strength was dropping faster than it should. They were learning, adapting their explosive yield with each shot. Sir, I said urgently, we need to pull back. Now. They're analyzing our defensive response in real time and adjusting their tactics. If we stay here much longer. No! Velcris slammed all 4 fists on his console. I will not be defeated by pen-wielding primitives. All ships, concentrate fire on the settlement coordinates. I want that entire area turned to glass. It was the wrong order. Even I knew it was the wrong order. Before the weapons could charge, 6 more human rockets launched simultaneously from different locations. Our point defense took out 3. The other 3 hit their targets with surgical precision. Not the big capital ships, but the smaller support vessels, supply ships, medical frigates, communication relays. Each one lost shields, and then secondary explosions bloomed from their hulls. They're targeting our infrastructure, the tactical officer reported, finally catching up to what I'd realized 5 minutes ago. They're not trying to destroy us, they're trying to cripple us. Strand us here, Dakota's voice returned. You have 10 minutes to begin evacuation procedures for your ground forces. After that, we start targeting your main fleet. And before you think about just leaving your soldiers behind, remember that we now have hostages. Treat them well, and we'll return them unharmed. Try anything stupid, and well, we've got a lot of pens and a lot of ideas about what to do with your technology once we take it apart. Velcris made a sound I can only describe as a dying Vrelian merchant being told they have to pay taxes. It was not dignified. Tactical options, he gasped. None good, sir, I reported honestly. They've positioned their launchers in civilian areas. Any attack would cause massive collateral damage and make us look like war criminals to the rest of the galaxy. They're using our own regulations against us. Also, they seem to have an unlimited supply of those rockets, which means they've been manufacturing them for months, under our noses, while we watch them farm. With pens, Sivara added helpfully. They planned all of this with pens and paper. Velcris's scales cycled through 17 different colors in 5 seconds. I'm pretty sure that's a medical emergency for Dravines. Begin evacuation, he finally croaked. All ships, hold position but prepare for tactical withdrawal. And someone, please, explain to me how farmers defeated the Council fleet with writing instruments. I could have explained. Humans didn't need fancy technology because they'd mastered something far more dangerous, which is applied intelligence. They'd taken basic principles, chemistry, physics, mathematics, and applied them with precision and creativity. They'd observed, calculated and planned without leaving any electronic signature for us to detect. They'd thought their way to victory while we'd relied on our technological superiority. And they'd done it all with pens. As the evacuation began, I watched Dakota Mills on the view screen. She was writing something in a small notebook, probably documenting everything for future reference, maybe drawing up plans for what to do next. With a pen, a blue one, and somewhere in the back of my mind, I realized that this wasn't just a defeat. This was a message. Humans were telling the galaxy that they didn't need permission to be dangerous. They didn't need advanced weapons or centuries of spacefaring experience. They just needed to think and write it down. The evacuation took 6 hours. 6 humiliating hours while we retrieved our wounded, our equipment, and our shattered pride. The humans didn't fire another shot. They just watched, documented, and occasionally someone would wave at our retreating forces. One soldier reported that a human farmer had given him a pen as a souvenir, a red one. When we finally broke orbit, Velcris sealed himself in his quarters. The rest of the bridge crew sat in stunned silence as Kepler 9 shrank in the view screen. So, Sivara finally said, are we going to report this to the Council? I looked at her. Report what? That we got outsmarted by farmers? That our massive technological advantage meant nothing against basic chemistry and planning? That humans are far more dangerous than we thought because they can think? When you put it that way, yeah. But we did report it. We had to. And 3 days later, when the full council convened to discuss the incident, the chamber was silent except for Velcris's shaking voice as he described our defeat. Then someone asked the question everyone was thinking. If they can do this with pens and farming equipment, what could they do with access to real weapons? Nobody had an answer. Nobody wanted to find out. The council chamber looked like someone had dropped a bomb made of panic and stupidity, which, considering what happened on Kepler 9, was probably appropriate. I stood in the witness section, watching 17 different species argue about what to do with the human problem. And yes, they were calling it a problem now. Funny how quickly we went from laughing at pen users to treating them like a galactic threat. High Chancellor Mevris, a floating jellyfish creature from the aqueous reach, pulsed an angry red color. We must respond with overwhelming force. Show these primitives that defiance comes with consequences. Brilliant plan, muttered Ambassador Quellin beside me. She was a Rothian, bird-like and surprisingly cynical for a diplomat. Let's attack the species that just humiliated our fleet with farm supplies. What could possibly go wrong? You're not helping, I whispered back. I'm not trying to help. I'm trying to enjoy the show before we all get killed by people with notebooks. On the central platform, Velcris looked like he'd aged 100 cycles in 3 days. His scales were a dull grey, and he kept all 4 arms folded defensively across his chest. The humans made their intentions clear, droned Senator Paxson, a mechanical entity that took everything literally. They wished to remain independent. Logically, we should respect this decision and move on. Respect? Respect? High Chancellor Mevris's tentacles writhed furiously. They destroyed 7 ships, injured 300 soldiers, made us look like fools in front of the entire galaxy. To be fair, Quellin whispered, we did that part ourselves. I elbowed her. She clicked her beak in what passed for a Rothian laugh. The debate raged for another hour. Some wanted revenge. Others wanted to pretend Kepler 9 didn't exist. A few suggested nuking the planet from orbit and claiming it was a mining accident. That last suggestion came from the Vrelian trade representative, which surprised nobody. Then the doors to the council chamber burst open. Not the normal, dignified opening you'd expect. Someone actually hit the manual override and made them slam into the walls. Very dramatic. Very human, as it turned out. Dakota Mills walked into the Galactic Council chamber like she owned the place. She wore the same practical clothes from before, still had dirt under her fingernails, and yes, that blue pen was still clipped to her pocket. Behind her walked 3 other humans, all dressed similarly, all looking completely unimpressed by the assembled representatives of 17 spacefaring civilizations. "How did you get in here?" Mevris sputtered. "This facility is protected by the finest security systems in the galaxy." Dakota smiled, that predator smile again. "Yeah, about that. Your security codes follow a pretty basic encryption pattern. We cracked it in about 20 minutes. Also, your guard outside was very helpful once we explained we just wanted to talk. Nice guy. We gave him cookies." She held up a small bag. "Anyone want one? Fresh baked this morning." The silence in the chamber was the kind you usually only hear in vacuum. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. I think Senator Paxson might have actually frozen up. "Right, tough crowd." Dakota pocketed the cookies. "So, we've been listening to your little debate. Nice acoustics in here, by the way. Sound carries really well through your ventilation system. We heard everything from the reasonable suggestions to the let's commit war crimes ideas. Very enlightening." Velkris found his voice. "You infiltrated a secure council facility, compromised our systems, and spied on a classified session. This is an act of war." "No," Dakota corrected, pulling out a small notebook. The blue pen appeared in her hand like magic. "This is diplomacy, human style. You were planning our destruction. We needed to know what we were dealing with. Also, technically, you started it by invading our colony with 67 warships. Pretty sure that counts as the war crime here." She flipped through her notebook, which was apparently full of notes. Handwritten notes. I could see diagrams, calculations, and what looked like doodles of various council species, mine included. She'd drawn me with my vocal membranes all twisted up. It was embarrassingly accurate. "Here's the situation," Dakota continued, walking toward the center platform like she'd been invited. "You thought we were primitive because we use simple tools. You thought we were weak because we don't have flashy technology. You were wrong on both counts. We're not primitive, we're efficient. And we're definitely not weak. You cannot threaten the entire council," Mevris boomed. "I'm not threatening anyone. I'm explaining reality." Dakota clicked her pen 3 times. I flinched. "So did half the council. See? You've already learned. That's good. Shows you can adapt." One of the other humans, a shorter man with grey hair and laugh lines around his eyes, stepped forward. "My name is Professor Marcus Webb. I taught physics at Oxford before we colonized Kepler 9. Want to know what I've been doing for the last 6 months?" Nobody answered, but he continued anyway. "I've been studying your ships, your weapons, your shields. Every time you scanned us, we scanned you right back, with equipment we built in barns. We know how your engines work. We know your hull compositions. We know exactly where to hit every single vessel in your fleet to cause maximum damage with minimum effort." He pulled out his own notebook, a green pen this time, and we wrote it all down. Every weakness, every vulnerability, every design flaw you've been too comfortable to fix because nobody's challenged you in centuries. A female human with copper-colored skin and calculating eyes added, "I'm Dr. Lisa Okoro, chemist. You know what's fun about chemistry? It works the same everywhere in the universe. Carbon bonds the same way here as it does on Earth. So do nitrogen, hydrogen, oxygen. All those ships you're so proud of, they've got oxygen systems, life support, fuel storage, all very explosive under the right conditions." The 4th human, a young woman who couldn't have been more than 25, raised her hand like she was in class. "And I'm Zoe Park, computer engineer. Your AI systems are adorable, by the way. Very advanced, very complex, also very predictable once you map their decision trees, which I did, on paper, with this." She took up an orange pen. Dakota let that sink in for a moment. "You're seeing the pattern here, right? Humans don't need your technology. We have something better. We have 5,000 years of figuring out how to kill each other more efficiently. We've had wars that made planets uninhabitable. We've developed weapons that could end civilization. And we did all of it before we left our own star system." "Then you're monsters," Senator Paxson stated flatly. "Maybe," Dakota agreed. "Or maybe we're just really good at survival. The thing is, we don't want to fight you. We came to Kepler 9 to farm, to build something peaceful. You forced our hand. But here's what you need to understand. If you leave us alone, we'll leave you alone. But if you come at us again, we won't just defend ourselves. We'll win, decisively, permanently. Bold words from 4 people, Mevris said, though his tentacles had stopped writhing quite so aggressively. Professor Webb smiled. 4 people in this room. But there are 15 million humans spread across 8 colonies now. Every single one of them has been taking notes, making plans, building defenses. You think Kepler 9 was impressive? That was one colony with 6 months of preparation. Imagine what we could do with more time, more resources, more motivation. Dr. Okoro opened her notebook. We've also been in contact with some of your member species, the ones who feel like the Council doesn't represent their interests, the ones who pay taxes but don't get protection. Turns out, a lot of people are very interested in human farming techniques and human defensive strategies. We've been sharing information, educational exchange programs, very peaceful, very legal. I saw several council members shift uncomfortably. The Rothians, the Kelverites, even some of the smaller Vrelian merchant families had been complaining about council fees for years. You're trying to undermine the council, Velcris accused. We're offering an alternative, Dakota corrected. Join the council, pay their fees, follow their rules. Or trade with humans, learn from humans, build partnerships with humans. No fees, no annexation, no condescension. Just mutual respect and fair exchange, Zoe Park added. Also, we're really good at agriculture. Your food production is inefficient by about 40%. We could fix that, just saying. High Chancellor Mevris pulsed through several colors I'm pretty sure represented a diplomatic crisis. This is blackmail. This is business, Dakota replied. You have something we want, which is to be left alone. We have something you want, which is knowledge, resources, and not having to fight a species that's really good at asymmetric warfare. Seems like a trade worth making. The council chamber erupted in arguments. Some species wanted to accept the human offer immediately. Others demanded military action. The Vrelians tried to calculate the profit margins on both options. It was chaos, but productive chaos. Quellin leaned over to me. They're actually going to do it. The humans are going to negotiate their way into galactic politics armed with nothing but notebooks and attitude. She wasn't wrong. Over the next 3 hours, Dakota and her team systematically dismantled every argument against human independence. They had facts, figures, precedents, and enough legal loopholes to choke a Vrelian lawyer. Every time someone raised an objection, one of them would flip through their notes and produce a counter-argument. It was like watching someone win a war with paperwork. Finally, exhausted and outmaneuvered, the council took a vote. By a margin of 11-6, they recognized human colonies as independent systems with full trading rights but no Federation membership required. Dakota Mills shook hands with High Chancellor Mevris. Well, she shook one of his tentacles. Close enough. Pleasure doing business with you, she said cheerfully. Mevris pulsed a defeated purple. I still don't understand how you defeated an entire fleet with farming equipment. It's simple, Dakota explained, pulling out her blue pen one more time. You focused on the tool, we focused on the thinking. This pen? She held it up. It's just a tool. But what matters is what you do with it. You can write a shopping list. Or you can write a battle plan. You can doodle flowers. Or you can calculate blast radii and shield frequencies. The pen doesn't care. It just writes what you tell it to. She clicked it once. Nobody flinched this time. Progress. You wanted to know our secret? Here it is. Humans don't need fancy technology because we learned a long time ago that the most powerful weapon in the universe is the 3 pounds of meat between your ears. Everything else is just accessories. Professor Webb nodded. Plus, we're stubborn as hell. That helps. As the humans left the council chamber, cookie bag in hand and notebooks full of new observations, I realized something important. The galaxy had changed. Not because of new technology or ancient alliances or economic shifts. It changed because 4 farmers with pens had walked into the most powerful political body in known space and reminded everyone that intelligence beats firepower every single time. Quellin must have been thinking the same thing. We're going to have to rewrite all the security protocols, aren't we? Probably, I agreed. And the military doctrine. And the first contact procedures. And basically everything else. Because of pens, because of thinking. The pens are just how they keep track of it. 3 months later, I transferred to the Human Liaison Office, partly because I was curious, mostly because I figured if you can't beat them, you might as well learn from them. My first day, Dakota Mills showed me around the Kepler 9 colony. It looked even more impressive from the ground. Every building served multiple purposes. Every crop rotation was mathematically optimized. Every defensive position was integrated seamlessly into daily life. It was beautiful in its efficiency. "You designed all this?" I asked. Dakota laughed. "Me and about 500 other people. We had planning meetings every week. Lots of debate, lots of ideas. Some worked, some didn't. That's the human way. We try things, we fail, we learn, we try again." She showed me her notebook. It was full of crossed-out ideas, corrections, arguments written in different handwriting, coffee stains that someone had turned into improvised diagrams. It was messy and imperfect and absolutely brilliant. "This is our real weapon," she said. "Not the explosives or the rockets or the shield calculations. This, collaboration, communication, writing things down so we don't forget, building on each other's ideas. It's not fancy, but it works." I thought about the Council. With our advanced computers and neural networks and quantum processors, we'd forgotten how to think without technology. The humans had never stopped. "Can I ask you something?" I ventured. "What would you have done if the Council had voted against you, if they'd decided to attack anyway?" Dakota's expression turned serious. She pulled out her pen, that blue pen, and clicked it once. "Plan B was already written down," she said quietly. "Every ship in your fleet has vulnerabilities. Every Council world has infrastructure weak points. We'd mapped it all. If you'd forced us to fight, we would have fought smart, fought dirty, and fought to win, because that's what survival looks like. And now?" She smiled, and this time it was genuine. "Now we farm, we trade, we share knowledge, we make friends. That was always plan A. Everything else was just in case." I looked at the pen in her hand. Just a simple cylinder with a metal tip. Nothing special, nothing fancy. But in the right hands, wielded by the right mind, it had changed the galaxy. "Want one?" Dakota asked, pulling a fresh pen from her pocket. "We ordered a bulk shipment. Blue, red, green, orange, purple. All the colors." I took it. A green one. It felt light in my hand, almost insignificant. "What should I do with it?" I asked. Dakota grinned. "Whatever you want. Write a letter, draw a picture, calculate orbital mechanics, plan a revolution. The pen doesn't care. It just wants to be used." She walked away, leaving me standing in the middle of a colony that had defeated the Galactic Council with farming equipment and handwritten notes. I looked down at the pen in my hand. Just a tool. Just a simple, primitive, utterly human tool. Then I pulled out a notebook I'd purchased from the colony store. Actual paper, actual ink, wonderfully primitive. And I started writing. Observations about human thinking. Notes on their planning methods. Ideas about how other species could adapt their approaches. I wrote for hours, and the pen never ran out of ink. Later that evening, I showed my notes to Dakota. She read through them, nodding occasionally, making comments in the margins with her blue pen. "Not bad," she said finally. "You're getting the hang of it. Pretty soon you'll be planning insurgencies and negotiating treaties with the best of us." Is that a good thing? Depends on your perspective. But here's what I've learned about pens, notebooks, and thinking in general. The act of writing things down forces you to organize your thoughts. You can't be vague on paper. You have to commit to ideas, work through logic, face contradictions. It makes you smarter just by doing it. She handed my notebook back. "Keep writing. Keep thinking. Keep asking questions. That's how you change the galaxy. Not with weapons or threats or superior technology, with ideas that work." As I walked back to my quarters that night, I passed the colony square where Dakota had stood 6 months ago, pen in hand, facing down 300 armed soldiers. There was a small monument there now, not a statue or a hologram, just a simple stone with an inscription. They thought we used pens only to write. They were right, but they forgot what writing means. Underneath, someone had added in fresh ink, probably with a pen. Thinking beats technology every time. I clicked my green pen once, twice, 3 times. Then I sat down and wrote some more, because that's what you do with pens. You write your own future, and if necessary, you write your enemy's doom.